Well, I've made it 9 hours into the day without spilling some food and drink on my white shirt, so that's one thing. Thank you very much, Desmond. You set a very high bar for this session. But no, that was great, and it's been really good to listen to so many interesting talks today and yesterday, so thank you, everybody. So my name's Laura. Let me go to my first slide. And I'm a senior evidence specialist at the Marine Management Organization. Today, I'm going to be talking about how a better understanding of how we make decisions that affect the marine environment can provide important insights into why we may not be on track to achieve our environmental goals and objectives, and crucially, how we, as decision makers, can apply this learning to help foster positive change to more sustainable and equitable environmental management. So global climate change and biodiversity loss pose significant risk to marine ecosystems and the communities that depend upon them. Without effective and urgent action, the effects of these complex and interconnected challenges will be unprecedented and long-lasting. We all know that. Various environmental goals and targets have been set to address these challenges and guide environmental action and governments at all levels, from local through to global. These goals include climate action, food security, clean water, responsible consumption and production, justice and equality, and sustainable, inclusive economic growth. The year 2030 is a critical milestone for measuring progress towards these actions. However, despite some advancements, research and indicator assessments show that the UK is not on track to meet its environmental goals and objectives by this time point. So where does decision-making come in? We are all decision makers. Individually, we're making decisions all of the time, and these decisions shape how we live our lives. Of course, many of those decisions are less about how we can transition to renewable energy and more about whether or not it's cold enough to justify putting the heating on. But the point is that every decision, big or small, has consequences, both positive and negative. Generally, the bigger the decision, the bigger the consequence. Thousands of decisions are being made across the UK government every day, with consequences that directly and indirectly affect the marine environment and the people who interact and depend upon it. What do we know about those decisions, their consequences, and the extent to which they support or hinder the achievement of our environmental goals? These questions highlight an essential and urgent need to critically understand the current decision-making landscape and explore whether there is scope for more informed, sustainable, and equitable decision-making that better supports progress towards achieving our environmental goals and objectives. So over the last 3 years, the Marine Natural Capital and Ecosystem Assessment Team at the MMO have been carrying out a project that seeks to better understand decisions that affect the marine environment and how we can apply this learning to support positive change. So through conversations with decision makers and key advisors over recent years, we've compiled a catalogue of over 150 different decisions. So as the pie chart there on the left shows, these decisions cover 9 different decision areas, including marine planning, licensing, fisheries, pollution, and conservation. Some examples of the different types of decisions that fall within those include decisions regarding fishing quota, the granting of different marine licenses, and responses to pollution spills. For each decision, we've captured a range of information. As shown on the screen here, this includes the social and economic impacts of a decision, and at what point in the decision-making process are those impacts considered. And below here, the spatial scale and the frequency to which those decisions are carried out. Other information involves who is involved in making or advising those decisions, whether there's stakeholder engagement and what that looks like in practice, and what types of evidence are used to inform the decision. This is by no means an exhaustive catalogue. However, it provides a comprehensive overview of the scale and the complexity of the marine decision-making landscape, and it's an important starting point for understanding where there may be potential for positive change. A significant part of our work has been developing an understanding of what sustainable and equitable decision-making looks like in practice, and what steps decision makers can take to better achieve this in real-life contexts. So following an extensive review of different environmental governance approaches, we've drawn out a set of key characteristics that reflect more sustainable and equitable forms of decision-making. I say the word decision a lot in this talk, and it's quite hard to say. So we've separated these characteristics into two main areas. On the left is what to consider, and on the right, how those decisions are made. So ideally, what should we as decision makers be considering? Many of these would have been touched on throughout today and throughout yesterday. Firstly, decisions should recognize the complex connections and interdependencies between humans and nature. This means taking into account ecological, social, and economic parameters. They should also consider how these interconnections and interdependencies change across different geographical scales, across physical and political borders, and how they vary over time. Importantly, decisions should incorporate key government priorities, such as the protection and the conservation of biodiversity and its associated benefits. And decisions should aim to align national policies with local priorities, while reflecting the specific environmental, social, and economic contexts in which they occur. As represented by the diagram on the right of the screen, decisions should seek to make a more nested, joined-up, systemic approach to environmental governance. And these different characteristics are all linked together, as I've tried to demonstrate with this diagram. So this helps to foster more collaborative and inclusive partnerships, valuing diverse knowledge, interests, and perspectives. That collaboration is essential for building a shared evidence base that ensures transparency in how that evidence is gathered and how it's used. Importantly, where collaboration involves stakeholders, it's about making sure that their participation is meaningful, it's inclusive, and it's empowering. This helps to build trust and a shared understanding of any problems and solutions. Finally, decision makers should continuously monitor and evaluate progress to improve practices and ensure that decision-making process is adaptable, flexible, and ready to respond to change. So we're using this learning to analyze the extent to which a subset of those key characteristics are followed across the decisions we have captured. The radar plot on the slide shows an example output from our initial findings. So the plot compares the average scores for all of the decisions, as indicated by the orange line, compared to an idealized approach that incorporates fully all of those characteristics, as indicated by the outer blue line. So this comparison indicates that there are actually no cases where all of these characteristics are fully considered or realized in practice. And in across most decision areas, decisions appear to have very limited consideration of them. In some cases, the consideration of all those characteristics is neither realistic nor feasible, and there may be many reasons for this. For example, there may be legislative barriers that place restrictions on what can or cannot be actioned. Or there may be specific contexts in which a decision has to be made under logistical pressures, for example, during an emergency response. However, in many instances, the absence or the limited consideration of these different characteristics does provide some potential opportunities to explore where more effective and sustainable decision-making is possible. There are decisions where increasing the extent to which ecological, social, and economic parameters are considered may help to close knowledge gaps or provide more robust forms of evidence, where the better incorporation of spatial and temporal scale may improve the understanding of the impact of decisions across natural and social systems, or enable greater preparedness for the potential impacts of pressures and threats. And where moving towards more collaborative, inclusive, and diverse decision-making may help strengthen public trust, encourage stewardship, or reduce societal inequalities. So while there is still much to be learned from this work, some initial engagement with teams within the MMO has already illustrated how the better incorporation of these characteristics can lead to more positive decision-making outcomes. And we hope to explore this more in the future with teams across the DEFRA system. Above all else, the learnings from this project have highlighted the importance of having a shared understanding of the marine decision-making landscape, of critically evaluating our roles and responsibilities as decision-makers, and recognizing the power that this knowledge has for inciting real and positive change towards tackling the scale and the complexity of the challenges that we face. Thank you.